That's a good smack of the daf today.
Like a schmuck of dust. Okay.
All right. Good morning, everybody. Today we got to put our thinking caps on. It's nothing too complicated. It's one of those things you just have to think out, but it's not that complicated. All right. Oh, good question. So today is Daf Ches. We left off at the bottom of Zayin and Beis. Do yourself a favor. Go to the
Library.
The library. You know what the library is?
Yeah.
Pull out like 3 bubble commas.
A lot of big mama.
Yeah.
I learned them go out. Whoa. We got it.
All right, I guess I'm the only one on. All right. So we left off Eisvei. We are 5 lines in the bottom on Zayin and Beis. So it says Eisvei. Ein lo ela idis. So we're talking about a case of a person only has idis land. Kulam goyvim min idis. All right, so he has 3 people that are collecting. Okay, we're actually going to have one at each level. So there's a zikin, person who was damaged, right, and therefore he can collect from the idis, which is the top level. Then there is a creditor who is baininus, and the third is a woman collecting her ksuba, and she collects ziboris. So there's 3 levels, and you happen to have, in this case, one of each level. So the person only has idis, he only has top quality, we'll call it grade A lands. Then everybody collects in there. Baininus. If he only has baininus, kulam govim baininus, everyone goes this. Ziboris, kulam govim ziboris. If he has only grade C, everyone has ziboris. Right, so that's clear so far. Hayulo idis baininus ziboris. If he has one of each, all each here. You got what we have here. Ziboris. Nizakin be idis, then the damager takes in the idis, ubalchay bainis, and the creditor takes in the middle, and the ksusisha is ziboris. 2 lines in the bottom. So far everything is pretty clean. Idis and bainis, if the guy only has idis and bainis, and these 3 people are trying to collect, so the zikin be idis, so those who are damaged collecting the idis, and balchovik subasisha bainis, and then the balchov, the creditor takes in the bainis, and the woman, so there's no ziboris, so she collects from the bainis, right? She looks out. Sure. Now, bainis is ziboris if there's only grades B and C, right? There's the middle and the lower end. So nizakin ubalchay the bainis. So damager and the creditor is bainis. The ksuvasisha is ziboris, and the ksuva of the woman is in the ziboris. So, thank you. So zisha is ziboris. Now, yeah. So now, so she's a visiboris. Now, idis visiboris. Turn the page. Now, let's say only had levels A and C, right? Idis and ziboris. So nizakin beidis, the damage is idis. Ubalchayv uksuvasisha ziboris, and the balchayv and the ksuva of the woman go to the ziboris. Ketani mi anelas, we said. Let's see the case we just mentioned before. Baininus visiboris. If there's the 2 lower cases, nizakin ubalchayv the baininus. So the nizakin and the balchayv, they are in the middle. The ksuva visiboris. Now, if you say that we evaluate the lands based upon the person who you're collecting from, his highest level of lands is baininus, so you shouldn't allow the creditor to collect the top level of lands. So our answers. So that was a question. Says, what happened? Really, when he borrowed money, right? So the borrower had all 3 levels of land, right? So who was his $1,000 loan mortgaged against? The middle lands, the baininus. So then the borrower sold the most expensive land, and his top land left was the baininus. But the baininus was already mortgaged for the loan because that was middle level at the time of the loan. So therefore, he can collect from that land at this point in time. He can collect from which? The baininus.
The baininus.
even though it's the guy's top land now.
Oh, I see.
Because why? Because it was originally mortgaged with this loan. And Hakinami Mustafa is logical say, why? Tani, we have another price. If you have this exact case where you have the middle and the lower end, right? B and C. Nizakin, the Baininus, the damager collects from the Baininus, because that's the top land the guy has, and Balchov and the Balchov gets pushed down to the worst land. Now, even though the Balchov normally gets Baininus, so why does this Bryce say the Balchov takes from the lowest land with the Ksubas Isha, Zibaris? So Kashi Adadi, it's Kashi the previous Bryce. Elo Lab Shmarino, Conscious Idis Ubakra, Conscious Idis Umakra. The first one, it was already mortgaged. If it was already mortgaged, the Baininus, so therefore you go for the Baininus. But the other one was never mortgaged when he took out the loan. The guy's top land was only Baininus quality, and therefore the Balchov gets pushed to the Ziboris. So therefore we base it upon, according to this, we base it upon the person's own lands and not based upon the world's lands. So we have these two brisas, and we actually brought one teretz just now in terms of that the Edis was around at the time of the initial loan, and now we're gonna have three more teretz. Really, we're talking about a case of no, when the time of the loan, when the time of the loan, the person only had Baininus and Ziboris. So why does one Bryce say collect from the Baininus, and the other Bryce says collect from the Ziboris? Kasha. Ha the Shali Baininus Shalob Kaidis de Alma. Or maybe you can say like this. That this guy, right, was his Baininus, right? And I always say Baininus was really considered to be like the top level of the world. So therefore, right, you don't allow a creditor to collect from Edis, they go to Baininus. So therefore, they go down to the Ziboris, we don't allow them to do that. And they all know it was regular standard. Therefore, because the should have been as another as a standard, therefore you push it out. Or everybody say, but even if you go in Shaisa, Baininus Shalok, Baininus Dialma, really his lands are the normal level, same levels of the world. He's not a fancier guy. One is we base it upon the guy whose land we're collecting from, and his top land is Baininus. So therefore, a Baal Chod cannot take from his Baininus; he must take from the next level, which happens to be Ziboris. My summer, no, we evaluate to the world. This is Baininus land, this is grade B, and therefore I take grade B. Now, and Ravina Omar, Kedula. He says, but the Ula plea, actually arguing on that which Ula said. Omar Ula said, really right? Really about Chov when he goes ahead and he collects his loan, his debt. He collects from the lowest. Shenamar, as the pasuk says. Where's this pasuk? Pasuk in Dvar. It says, "Bachutz tamod va'isha shirata neishaba yaitze alecha as a abud hachutza." So it says over there. Then the person will bring out that which he brings out. So ma darko shadam la'itzi lachutz. So what person does he bring outside his house? Not with securing the house. Pachash v'kelim. Right. So in other words, he's bringing out basically cheap items, and those you take from because he owes you a debt. So you see over there, the cheap you take from the cheap. So a person can go ahead and collect from the cheap, and so really made the rice. And what is cheap? Cheap is Ziboris land. So therefore, middle is umatam or balchayvin. So what's the reason why they were masaking to go ahead and say, a creditor doesn't take the lowest level, takes the middle level, right? Because a person knows that if I don't get paid, I'm only going to get his really poor land, his Ziboris land, I'm not going to lend the money. So we'll say, okay, you'll be able to collect better collateral. Midrabanan will say you can collect from Baininus, not Ziboris.
So according to this, really, no matter what, you're giving the Baal Bayit the upper hand to decide which one it is.
Well, not the upper hand, but the middle.
It's really the end.
But the middle. But so according to Ula Midaraisa, it's really, and it's you can give the value is always there. The dollar amount is the dollar amount. It's just the quality of land, right? If I give you $1 million of land in the what's it called? Let's say in the South Side, right? Versus in Lincoln Park, right? It's two different, right? So one is a couple blocks, and the other one is just one parcel.
You end up getting the same value, but
right. So over here, the creditor really the minimum. As long as he gets his money back,
Right.
don't cry. So, but nevertheless, we say no. They're going to cry, and because they're going to cry, they're not going to loan anymore. So therefore, we'll allow them to take from the middle. So over here, so one holds of that. We allow him to take from the middle, and therefore we allow him to be abandoned. And now it says no, midiraisa, I don't care, and therefore he goes ahead and takes from the divorce. So the other one does not hold the fine. 2 dots. So that was one sugya of the day. Now comes the next one. Right? There's 3 of them. Cutter a button, right? Continue with our thinking caps. So once again, we're going to be dealing with a situation where all 3, there's going to be 3 people need to collect from one person, i.e., a person who was damaged, a lender, and his soon-to-be ex-wife. Now, guy has lands, right? He has all different sorts of lands. He has all the levels. Edis, Venus, Boris. So if he had these lands and he sold all of his lands to one person, he says, you know what, buy my entire portfolio, or he sells it to 3 different people at the same time, right? Or like one, right? In other words, they all at the same time. Right, so they all basically they replace the owner. In other words, for the Zikin, the guy will collect the Edis. For the Balcho, will collect the Baininus. For the Ksubas Isha, she'll collect the Zibur. So whoever has those lands, she'll go ahead and collect it. So
all those lands were sold.
Everything. Right. So we're assuming everything is sold by Achrayos, right? We're only going to touch on that mamash the last teretz of the day. But everything is assumed to all be the same. Now, B'zach or Zeh, let's say he has all these lands at the time when he owes the money, he doesn't pay them back yet, and then he sells one after the other. So B'zach is that. So Kulan Gadim and Achra. So, and let's say these lands were worth, each one was sufficient to pay for all 3, right? It's not like they take everything away. Sufficient to pay for all 3. So what happens? They all go to the last one that was sold. Why? Because
it was
it was the last one. And the rule is that if you go ahead and you collect, in other words, if I'm a buyer, right? So the buyer, he doesn't lose out his money. He just has to go back to the person he bought the land from to get his money back, which is a pain. So what do we say? If I buy someone's land and the guy owes money, he can't say, oh, okay, go ahead and collect the land from Yoel because he just bought my land and that was, mortgage, at the time of your loan. No. If he has available lands, the seller and the creditor or the guy who owes the money, you collect from the B'nai Chayrin first. You collect from those first before you start reaching out to people who bought from him, before you start, bringing in the pictures. So over here, whatever land was bought last, right? Because the first buyer and the second buyer are saying, hey, that's why I didn't buy all your lands because I knew you owed money and I didn't want to take all your lands because those creditors would come to me. So now I left you lands when I bought it. So therefore, but the last person can't have that claim. The last person, he knows that he's buying the last land. If this guy, the buyer or seller owes any money, they're going to go ahead and collect from me first. So therefore we say, they all go ahead and they collect the Akron first. If he doesn't have enough, then go the Mishalafanah. But if he doesn't have enough sufficient to cover all 3, then he goes to the one before them and Ainlo. And if he doesn't, the second one doesn't have enough, go to Mishalafanah. You go to the first person. Now, what does it mean you sold to one person? So if he sold all one portfolio at the same time, right? So he said if 3 people bought at the same time, where you could say that maybe this one, you're at the title company, and this one finished his work first, and then this one did it afterwards, so it's now at the same time. Nevertheless, we say if 3 people bought at the same time, that each people goes to the appropriate land, right? Mm-hmm. So the one person buys the portfolio, right? Obviously, we're saying that. Rather, what does it mean when he sold to one person? It means he sold to one person, but not all at the same time. Now,
on the same day?
No, not the same day. It doesn't have to be the same day. The same buyer. But the same buyer, but at different times. One was January, one was February, one was March. Okay? And they were all owed money, and the guy owed the money from December, from before that, right?
The owner.
The previous landowner, right? His ex-wife.
That everybody collects from Zibaris. Because that was the last piece of land that was sold.
So you want to say the Achron. So let's see. So you want to say the Achron, right? You want to say the Achron. So let's see.
Whatever was sold.
But it's the same buyer. Let's see. Why do you say each and every one? So Amalei, he nachni l'chol makom legabis mimenu, right? So hi nami, akol chad v'chad, leimalei nachni l'chol makom legabis mimenu. So over here, right, he can say, hey, I left you the last, the reason why when I bought the land in January and February, I left over there the land for you to go ahead and collect in March. Talk about edis b'achrona. Well, let's say over here, so each one collects their own, what's appropriate, right? The damager collects the edis, the other collects the beinus, and the other collects the ziboris. So the question is, why is that? Why don't we say just collect the last one? So let's say the last one he bought was the top land, the edis. So he doesn't want to say collecting the last one, the last parcel, right? Because the last one's his best, right? So b'chein Rav Sheshes could go and shalakach edis b'achrona. So Yachi, they so cool of the Gavim Edis. If that's the case, everyone should collect from the Edis. Oh, it's the last land. Thank you, Shkoyach. Thank you for leaving that one over. Shum Damalu. Ishtakisu b'shaklina k'naichu shaklisa. Listen, if you guys will be quiet, you don't cause any problems. So each one of you go collect what's appropriate to you. Below, and if not, mahadrona shtar ziboris lamare. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to return the land, the ziboris land, to the owner. And now that land will come b'nei chayrin. And therefore, your creditors, you can't go to Mishibadas, right? You can't go to lands that were encumbered already by other people who bought it. You have to go to his available land. And his available land is going to be in the south side. You want that? Right? Don't insist on taking my Lincoln Park land, right? You know, you take this, you take the Rogers Park, you take the Lincoln Park, and you take your south side, which you're worth. Otherwise, I'm going to give you all the south side. Right? And then that will be the only one, and therefore you all collect for that. So if that's the case, to the right? Understand the case of damages, also name a haki, right? Say in this case, say each one, hey, I can go ahead and return. So you should go ahead and be forced to go ahead and take the average land. If you take the average land, great. Right. In other words, go take the average land, don't take my best land, because take beinus. Otherwise, I'm going to send back the ziboris, and you're all three going to collect from the ziboris. Right. So that can be the situation, because if that's the situation, then he would not allow. He would tell basically the damaged party to go ahead and take from beinus. Otherwise, you end up with ziboris. Right. Why would he? Why would he give up his edis if he didn't have to? So we're talking about that the person who got it wasn't necessarily a buyer; it was Yisayim. It was the guy died. Therefore, and therefore he can't go ahead and return it. And therefore, right, you can't go ahead. There's nobody else to go ahead and collect it from. So therefore, the chiv is on him. You can't push them off. So therefore, you can't say this. We'll say like this. What's the reason why we say you don't go ahead and collect from the Nechasim Meshubadim? In other words, if I owe money, right, and then I sell a piece of land, and he says, okay, I need to collect land. So he says, okay, you know what? I had land when I owed you money, but I sold it. Go ahead to Yigal and take the land from him, and then I'll pay Yigal back, right? So what's the reason why we say that? If I still have other lands, right? Because of the takana of the buyer, right? In other words, nobody's going to buy land, right? Because if they can just go ahead and collect me, even if the seller has other lands. So who's the benefit for? The benefit's for Yigal, right?
The protection.
That's the protection for Yigal. So in this case, he's saying, Ana b'hatakana. So in other words, what's the takana in this case? Right? The takana is that what's the reason why we say you collect from the last land that was purchased, right? Why is that? Because takana for the buyer. So the buyer over here who bought all three parcels of land and bought the edis at the end, right? Well, you're saying, oh, that's the last land. Everyone should go ahead and collect from it, right? On the yes, thank you for this takana, but I don't want it working for me. And the Rabbi, like Rabbi says, right? A person's allowed to say, I don't want the takana of the chachamim to work. So the takana of the buyer is, you can go ahead and collect the last land sold, right? I'm the buyer. I do not want that takana because the last land sold was the edis, right? Therefore, I prefer going to normal, take out the takana, and therefore the damager will collect from the edis, the balchov, the beinus, and the ksuvas isha will be from the ziboris. And if I don't want it, And what is this case that Rava said it? That a woman can go ahead and say to her husband, you know what? You don't need to support me, and I won't give you my paychecks, and I don't need the takana of the chamim of you taking care of me. Fine. So a woman is allowed to say that, and therefore the buyer in this case can say, I do not want the takana working for me. Rather, each one take the land that's appropriate for them. Fine. Now, the third case of today. 2 dots around a third of the way down on Chesed and Beis. Shita Machar Lokeach Beinas Vizur. All right, so now we're going back. We still have 3 people trying to collect money. The person was damaged, a creditor, and the ksuba of a woman. All right, or right, the woman's trying to collect her ksuba. And we're talking about one guy bought the land from this guy who owed everybody money. Now, this buyer actually sells now to a third party. All right. Now, a new buyer. So pshita machar lokeach beinas v'zibaris b'shar idis. So what did he do? All right. He sold the B and C, right? The B and C, and he left for himself. All right. So let's go back to the case. I was the one who owed everybody money, right? I damaged somebody, I borrowed money, and I owe my wife the ksuba. And so I'm a big mess, and I sold my lands to Yigal, right? Yigal bought 3 lands from me. And now, what did Yigal do? He sold 2 lands, the Beinas and Zibaris, to Eddie, right? So, Machar loikeach Beinas v'Zibaris v'shar Edis, and then he left for himself the Edis, which you happened to have purchased last from me. Remember, that was the case, right? You purchased the best land last, and then for not only that, so you sold my other 2 lands to Eddie, and you kept that piece of land. Now, a wise real estate decision. So we say pshita machar lokeach beinas v'zibaros v'shar idis lefan of leisukulu the legal idis, right? Everyone can go ahead and collect the last land.
Everyone you owe.
The IO is collecting from the Yigal, from the idis, from the last land. Why? Now, even though we said if he doesn't sell it all, right? We said that each one gets their level, but if Yigal sold the other 2, then everybody collects the idis. Why is that? Because that was the last one that was purchased from me, right? And therefore the Ziboris and the the Ziboris and the Beinas are not by you. Right? Because over here, right? Because in this case Yigal doesn't have anymore, because he would have been able to say, right, if Yigal still had the Beinas and the Ziboris, he could have said, hey, the Beinas and Ziboris, that's no Gabe. The Matzah name Gabe and Ziboris. He could have said, collect from the Beinas and Ziboris. Like because I don't want the Takana Rabbanan. Everyone take their own level. I don't want the Takana working for me in that case, right? About Machar, Edis. I know, and therefore in that case, he can say, so in this case, so he can't say collect from the other ones because he doesn't have it anymore, right? So therefore they all collect from the Edis of a Machar Edis. But let's say he went ahead and sold Edis, all right, and he kept the other 2. Now the 3 people come. So do they go ahead and can they collect from Eddie, the Edis, right? And now which is the last land that was purchased from me? That was the last land I owed. So really, that was really where everyone should collect from. But now that's in Eddie's hands, so Yigal was smart to sort of sell it off. Mm-hmm. Or do we say that Yigal was the buyer of my lands, and therefore we collect from Yigal? Right. About Machar Edis,
they can go.
Let's see. So now you sell the Edis and you collect the other 2. Let's see about Machar Edis v'shar beinas v'ziboris mai. So sabra abai l'meimar also kulu gabim Edis. Everyone can go ahead and collect Edis. Why? Edis was the last land that was purchased from me. So the rule is that whatever was the last land purchased from me, that's what people collect from. However, Amalei Rava. So Ma Macha Rishon L'Sheni. What did Yigal sell to Eddie? Right? Not only the land. Whole Zuchus Shetava Liyado. Any Zuchus, any rights, any claims that you would have, you could also give to Eddie. Right? Now. Since they would have come to you, Matzi Agbilu Abinis Vizibaris, Apapi the Chizamni Benis Vizibaris, right? Akati Zibaris, Benecher. But now, what do you say in this case? That if they would have come to Yigal, right? So if they would have come to him, he would have been able to go ahead and tell them to go ahead and take the Beinus and Zibaris. And even though when he first bought it, right, he only bought the Beinus and Zibaris, and the Edis was still Beicharim. Now he bought the Edis because he bought the Edis last. Right, and therefore he can't go ahead and collect them. Right, he doesn't want this takana. So therefore the lokech could also say Gavi Beinus Zibaris. Right, the Chizavin lokech sheni adayt the Chol Zchusei the Havile the Rishon begavazav. In other words, because in this case, since the Yigal could have claimed, listen, I left over the Edis, right, and therefore, right, you can't go ahead and collect from me. So therefore, in this case, he can go ahead and say, I left that over, so therefore you can't collect from these. So therefore, in this case over there, you can push off the Edis. So to over here, that which he sells to Eddie, right? Now there's a chusim of not allowing them to go ahead and to only collect for the Beinus Zibur. So therefore, that would apply in this case, and therefore, therefore in this case, Eddie could push them off, and then Yigal would be mechuyev to go ahead and pay for all. So he's really protected. He's protected because he bought the right. Because you could have pushed off from the Edis. Therefore, he's also able to, because he has the same rights. He also basically bought the ability, right, to push that off. Now, two more cases. So these are quicker cases. So Amar Rava, right. So Amar Rava, Reuven Shemachar Kosados of Shimon. Reuven sold all of his fields to Shimon. V'halach Shimon and Machar said Achas Levi. And Shimon sold one of his fields to Levi. Ubaba the Reuven and someone who Reuven, the original guy, owed money to and he couldn't pay. So Ratzim Izegov, he can collect from either one of them. He can collect from Shimon or Levi. Lo Amran. Ella Dezavin Beinus, right? Only we're talking about a case where he sold his the guy bought the Beinus. Valzavin Edis Ubeinus. But if he went ahead and if he went ahead and he bought Edis and Ziboris, the third guy, Levi, Valzavin Edis and Ziboris, and now it's Balchov, right? Balchov normally collects them from Beinus, and he was careful to buy only top or lowest quality. He didn't buy the middle ones. Why? Because he didn't want creditors to collect it. So Levi's a little smart, right? So about Zavin Edis Ziboris, lo, he can't collect from Levi. Why? Lahachi Daiki Zavin Edis Ziboris. This is the reason why I bought these lands, just for this specific case that a creditor Balchob could not go ahead and take it. Because I know it's not fit for you. And even if Levi bought Beinus Nami, he could also say, "Lo, I'm not Ella Deloy Shar Beinus Dikvase." Right? Now, if he buys Beinus, but he left over some land by Shimon, right? Beinus enough for the chov. So then, even in this case, you can say Deloy Matzim Alei Hinachti L'Chol Makom, like Abi Shimon, right? Now, as if he left barely enough land of Beinus by Shimon, so therefore he can't argue anything. Aval Shar Beinus Dikvase Gabi Shimon, but let's say he left over land large enough still by Shimon. Levi bought half of the Beinus. So Levi will say, right? You can't collect from me because there's the reason why I only bought half his land. Go ahead and collect the other half from Shimon. So therefore, Shimon was the guy who bought from Reuben. So therefore, that's the reason why I only bought half. I didn't buy all of it. In that case, right? So Rava argues with Abai. And last case, Amar Abai, the Reuven Shemachar Sadeh Shimon. So Reuven sold the field to Shimon. Bachrayas, right? He sold it with a warranty. The Reuven comes and the Balchov. So Dina, right? He's going to go ahead and try and collect the field from Shimon. So Reuven is allowed to go ahead and argue and basically prevent this creditor of taking the field from his buyer Shimon, right? And the creditor can't say, "Hey, Reuven, stay out of this. I'm just trying to collect my land," right? Because he say. Right? Because Reuben will say, yeah, because if you take away Shimon's land, then he's going to come to me. So it is my business because ultimately it's going to come back to me. So therefore, I'm allowed to go ahead and fight. Because some say, even if there's not Bechrais, even if Shimon can't go back to Reuben and say, hey, where's my warranty? Even if there's no warranty, right? All sales are final. Nami Damalei Lo Nichli Titavi LeShimon Taruma Salai. I don't want him to have claims on me. So even though that Shimon can't collect money from me, but I don't want to have a bad reputation of selling things and this now we take away. Therefore, Reuben is allowed to go ahead and argue the case on behalf of Shimon to try and prevent the creditor from going ahead and collecting. All right, we'll stop here. Shkayach, everybody, everyone have a wonderful Shabbos and 6:40. Yeah, 6:45. Yeah.